Now we come to the preface of this book. Preface means something written by the author before the main contents. If it is written by other persons, then the author, we call it the foreword. So foreword is different from preface. Preface is written by the author, but foreword is written by other people. Early Buddhist teachings are the subject of an increasingly impressive body of scholarship in the form of monographs, book chapters, scholarly articles, and encyclopedia entries. This sentence means that the study on the early Buddhist teachings are very popular now. They can be written in the form of monographs. Monographs means a very detailed writing about a very special topic. Book chapters means only some parts of a book, some chapters on the early Buddhist teachings in a certain book. Scholarly articles, that's the scholarly papers, thesis, and the encyclopedia entries. Encyclopedia contains many entries, and early Buddhist teachings can be the entries of the whole body of entries in an encyclopedia. The present volume takes up the position that the best way to understand early Buddhist teachings is to understand them as a critical response to the binary opposition between two world views, spiritual eternalism, Sasattavada, and materialist Neonationalism, Uchettavada. The present book is this book. The early Buddhist teaching, takes up the position. It means that the author believes the best way to understand early Buddhist teachings is to understand them as a critical response to. It means before the Buddha's time or after the Buddha's passing away, there are two opposite world view. One is spiritual eternalism, and the other is materialist nationalism. It means that Buddhism aims for the salvation or the liberation of one's sufferings. And all the teachings in Buddha Dharma is for the purpose of relieving one's suffering. It is not a kind of philosophy, but it is kind of practice. If one can attain the nirvana or nibbana, one has to have a very right view, the correct view about oneself and the world. And therefore, one should have right view, not the wrong view of our life and the world. If we cannot have the right view, then we cannot practice on the right path to attain Nibbana. Therefore, The early Buddhist teachings is to guide people to have a correct view of one's life. The existing worldviews before and after the Buddha are spiritual eternalism. Eternalism means the principle which can everlast. Spiritual has something to do with our spirit, not something to do with our physical body. Physical body may die one day, but people believe there is something behind our physical body. Something behind the physical body will last forever, even after the body collapses. This kind of everlasting entity is metaphysical, so it is called spiritual. In Pali, it is called Sasatta Vada. Vada means science or knowledge, and Sasatta means eternalism, the knowledge or the science about something which can everlast. This is one extreme worldview. Here, the world means our life or our five khandhas. In English, it's called five aggregates. Aggregates of body, aggregate of sensation, aggregate of perception, aggregate of volitional construction, and the aggregate of consciousnesses. The other extreme worldview is called materialist annihilationism. Uchetta vata. Uchetta means to cease or to disappear, or we may say to annihilate, to disappear after our physical body collapse. The first is the metaphysical view of the self, a self that is distinct from the physical body. The first means Sasatta Vada, or the spiritual eternalism, is the metaphysical view of the self. Meta means origin. Metaphysical means something which is the origin of our physical body, our matter. Matter means the origin. Physical is something concrete, which can be seen or can be heard or can be touched. And the matter is the essence or the nature of the concrete matter. Metaphysical view of the self. To look at the self not from the viewpoint of matter, but from the viewpoint of the essence, origin, or substance of matter. This is to look the self. The self means our life or our five aggregates from the viewpoint of the nature that is abstract. That is not concrete, not body. It is abstract. A self that is distinct from the physical body. This self is different from the physical body. A physical body can be born sometime and then dies sometime. But the spiritual life or the spirit is something metaphysical which transcends the birth and the death of the physical body. This is the first world view, the spiritual eternalism. And the second is the physical view of the self, a self that is identical with the physical body. The second view of the self is called Uchittavata. Uchittavata means something which can disappear or which can cease sometimes in the future. The second view is to look at the self from the viewpoint of matter. This kind of self is the same with our physical body. When our physical body dies, then the self disappears. There will be no more self. Self in Pali is called Atta, A-T-T-A, Atta, Atta. But in Sanskrit, it is called Atma, A-T-M-A-N, A-T-M-A-N, Atta or Atma. These two world views exist for a long time. And we may say these two world views existed since people can think until even this day. We have two opposite world views. These two theoretical views, as the Buddha clearly indicates, have a tendency to persist throughout the history of human thought. These two kinds of worldviews is called theoretical. But theoretical is something out of our brain. Theoretical is not something which can be experienced. We can experience cold, or we can experience hot, or we can experience happiness, and we can experience suffering. But theoretical views are the result of our thinking, not the outcome of experience. The theoretical views cannot be experienced by anybody. The Buddha clearly indicates, it means that the Buddha said clearly that these two world views are the outcome of our logical thinking, or the outcome of our faith, not something which we can experience. These two theoretical views have a tendency to produce, but to produce means to exist forever throughout the history of human thought. It means when we have the written record of human thought, that is the characters or the language. From the very beginning, people have language, people have writing characters. These two theoretical views already existed and even last until today. It is thus essential, that we understand early Buddhist teachings are representing a middle position, a position that transcends the mutual conflict between two perennial world views. Therefore, it is very important to remember that we understand early Buddhist teachings are representing means a middle position and represent again by the Buddha and the ancient great masters of Buddha Dharma. It means represent. And we can say that the middle position is the ultimate truth of our life or of even the whole world. Buddha only discovered this middle position and then told us. The Buddha only represented the existent truth of our life under the world. This position transcends the mutual conflict between two perennial worldviews. These two worldviews are called perennial. That means these two worldviews have been existing for a long time, from the very beginning of the history of human thought until today, and even to the future. But the early Buddhist teachings represent a middle position that transcends the mutual conflict. It means that these two worldviews conflict each other. And the early Buddhist teachings transcend them. They keep aloof from these two worldviews. If the doctrine of dependent arising is called the middle doctrine, this is because it sets itself equally aloof from spiritual eternalism and materialist annihilationism. If the doctrine means the teaching, actually, it is not a good expression to call dependent arising. We can only call the dependent arising as a kind of teaching by the Buddha. It is better to use the teaching because it is not doctrine. Doctrine something like a dogma. It is only a teaching and a discovery of the Buddha. If the teaching of the dependent arising is called the middle doctrine or middle teaching, why? This is because it sets itself equally aloof from. Equally aloof from means that dependent arising keeps distance from these two worldviews equally, keep same distance from spiritual eternalism and the materialist annihilationism. This is from the viewpoint of the teaching. It is a kind of knowledge or a kind of the right view about our life. The next one is the practice or the path based on the right view for us to practice in order to attain Nibbana. If the Noble Eightfold Path is called the middle path, this is because in the same manner, it keeps itself equally aloof from the two extremist practices associated with the two theoretical views, namely self-modification and sensual indulgence. Self-modification comes from the spiritual eternalism, and the sensual indulgence comes from the materialist neonationalism. Therefore, if we have the right view, dependent arising, or we may call it dependent co-arising, or even co-dependent arising, is equally aloof from these two worldviews, then the mid path of the Eightfold Noble Path practice, which is the result of the middle doctrine of dependent arising. Therefore, the Eightfold Noble Path is the practice to keep aloof from the two extremist practices, self-modification and essential indulgence. Self-modification means self-torture, and the self here means the physical body. The self-modification comes from the spiritual eternalism. Those people believe why we suffer now. It is because we indulge in our sensual desires. Therefore, if we expect to have freedom from sufferings, we have to torture our physical body. After we torture our physical body, then in the future, we can have eternal spirit. We will be free from suffering. Sensual indulgence is the result of materialist annihilationism, which believes that our physical body is the self, is the Lord or the agent of our life. Therefore, when we have the dependent arising as the middle doctrine to keep aloof from spiritual eternalism and the materialist annihilationism, when we practice the Eightfold Noble Path, naturally, the Noble Eightfold Path is aloof from the self-modification and the sensual indulgence. Thus, both in theory, dependent arising, and the practice, Noble Eightfold Path, early Buddhism follows a middle position. Early Buddhism follows a middle position in both theory and practice. Theory is to guide practice. If one cannot have the right theory, one cannot practice in the right way. Other than one cannot attain Nibbana. Buddhism emphasizes the right view before the right practice. One has to have the right view, then one can practice in the right way. And finally, one can attain Nibbana. Everything in Buddhism can be called the middle position. We may say not only the early Buddhism and even the Mahayana Buddhism or even Vajrayana Buddhism also adopt the middle position in both theory and practice. Besides the middle position, there is nothing in Buddha Dharma. If we want to judge whether a teaching or a doctrine belongs to Buddhism or whether certain kinds of practice belongs to Buddhism, we can use the middle position as a criterion to judge whether it is Buddhism or not. For early Buddhism, middleness does not mean moderation. We may say not only for early Buddhism, even for Mahayana or Vajrayana Buddhism. Middleness does not mean moderation. Moderation is to do something within a reasonable limitation. It means middleness does not mean this is the standpoint within the world views of spiritual eternalism and the materialist universalism. No, it has nothing to do with the spiritual eternalism and the materialist universalism. Nor does it mean a compromise of the two extremes or a synthesis that embraces the two extremes. Middleness not only doesn't mean the moderation of these two worldviews, but also middleness is not a compromise of the two extremes. A compromise means use the spiritual eternalism to fit the materialist universalism. They compromise with each other. No, the middleness viewpoint of Buddhism doesn't mean that. And it is not a synthesis. Synthesis means a collection or a mixture. Middleness is not a mixture of these two extreme viewpoints. This defined by the Buddha himself, maintenance is to be understood as not entering into the two extremes, Upho ante anupakama. The Buddha defined the maintenance as not entering either of the two extremes. Here we have the Pali word. Abho antu anupakama. Anupakama means not entering either of the two extremes in Pali. It is called Upho ante. Ante means either. Upho means extremes. The Buddha defined the middleness or the middle position as not entering. Not entering means nothing to do with either of the two extremes, or in other words, it keeps aloof from. Buddhism doesn't touch with any kind of either of the two extremes. In other words, middleness is the transcendence of the mutual opposition between the two extremes. There are many other extremes in relation to which Buddhism adopts the middle position. That is, for example, extreme realism, sappam atti, and extreme nihilism, sappam nati. Extreme monism, sappam ikatam, and extreme pluralism, sappam pututam. There are many other extremes. We can say numberless extremes. People have dualistic thinking. People is ignorant. Therefore, people always believe everything is true. Everything is substantial. People will have numberless extremes thinking. For example, extreme realism. Extreme realism in Pali is called sappam atti. Sappam means all things or everything. Sappam, no exception. Atti, we can translate atti as the meaning or the truth. It is realism, reality. Sappam atti, all things are real. And extreme nihilism, sappam nati. Sappam means all things. Nati is the negative form of atti. We have atti. Atti means something which is meaningful. Something which is meaningful. Therefore, something is real. Its opposite negative form is nati. Nati means something which has no meaning. Which has no meaning, it means which is unreal. Therefore, we call it nihilism. Extreme monism and extreme pluralism. Sabam ikatam. Sabam means all things. Ikatam, ikatam, ika, ika means one. Ikatam means only one. Sabam ikatam means all things are nothing but one. There is no difference at all. This is called sabam ikatam, or in English, extreme monism. Monism means everything is the same. Extreme monism means all things are only one. All things are the same. And extreme pluralism, sabam puttatam. Sabam, all things. Puttatam means plural or different. Everything is different. All things are different from each other. This is called extreme pluralism. The Buddhist middle positions keeps aloof from every kind of two extreme viewpoint, whether they are extreme realism and extreme nihilism, or extreme monism and extreme pluralism, or even we say happiness and suffering, or we may say self and selflessness. And now we still have another two extremes. Determinism and indeterminism. Determinism has two forms. One is the theistic determinism, and the other is called karmic determinism. Theistic has something to do with a creator God. For example, in ancient India, the Brahmanism believes that everything is determined by the Brahma, or everything is created and everything is controlled by the Brahma God. Karmic determinism is the new religions against the traditional Brahmanism. They don't believe a creator God, but they have the idea of karma. They believe that the past karma determines our present life, and our present life will determine our future life just because of our karma. Whether we do good action or bad action, or we speak good speech or bad speech, can determine our life, can determine our destiny. Theistic determinism refers to Brahmanism, and the karmic determinism refers to other non-Brahmanism. However, they believe Karma is the power to determine our life. Indeterminism means nothing is certain, nothing is controlled by other things. Our life or our present life, our future life is not controlled by external factors. Nothing can determine us. It is only out of nature. It is the natural consequence. For example, when the springtime comes, then everything flourishes. And the winter comes, it will have snow. It is a kind of natural phenomena. It is not determined by any other factors. This is called indeterminism. Now we understand here that determinism has two kinds. The first kind is theistic determinism, and the second kind is karmic determinism. Theistic determinism refers to external power from an almighty God. And the karmic determinism refers to our own behavior and speech and even our thought. So one is the internal factor, the other one is the external factor. The external factor is the theistic determinism, and our own factor is the karmic determinism. Determinism means our life cannot be changed. There's no way to change our destiny because our life, our destiny, or our fate is determined by either the Creator God or our own karma. And indeterminism is the so-called natural consequence. They don't believe the cause and the effect. Everything happens accidentally. There is no cause and no effect. There is no relation between the previous time and the later time. Self-causation and eternal causation. Self-causation means the karmic determinism, and external causation refers to either the theistic determinism or any other external factor. Self-causation in Pali is called sayam. Sayam katta. Katta means to act or to cause or to do something. Sayam means self. Sayam katta means self-causation. It means our life is the result of our action. It is our own self which can determine our life. And the external causation is the opposite. In Pali, it's called param katta. Param means other. We have the word parami or paramita. paramita, parami, I means to arrive or to reach. Parami means to reach to other, to go beyond ourselves or to go beyond the present situation. Paramita means to go, means the nature of going beyond our life or something. In English, it can be called perfection. Paramita can be called perfection in English. It means for the present, our life is imperfect, but after we practice something, then we can go to the other show. We can perfect certain kind of practice and bring us to the other show of Nibbana. However, as we shall see in the course of this work, these other extremes can be subsumed under the two main headings, spiritual eternalism and materialist annihilationism. In the course of this work, it means we will read the whole book. In the process of reading this book, we will find many kinds of extremes. However, all other extremes can be subsumed or can be categorized under the two main headings, spiritual eternalism and materialist annihilationism. In the context of what we have observed above, the question arises, is it logically necessary that the truth should lie in the middle rather than in one of the two extremes? In the context of what we have observed above, we have discussed already that early Buddhist teachings, or even whole Buddhist teachings, keeps aloof from the two extremes. Then we may have the question, is it logically necessary? Because Buddhist teachings keep aloof from these two extremes, then logically we may say these two extremes are not the truth of our life. Then the consequence is the truth should lie in the middle rather than in one of the two extremes. This is a question we may have. In answering this question, we would like to make two observations in reply. We can mention two things. The first observation is that nowhere in the early Buddhist discourses is it claimed that truth should necessarily occupy the middle position. The first thing the authors want to say is that early Buddhist scriptures, discourses means talks. Actually, originally, it means talks. But here, discourses means the scriptures or the literature, or we may say the sutras, or the Shastras, the Vinaya, all the Buddhist books, all the early Buddhist writings don't claim that truth should necessarily occupy the middle position. The second observation, the other observation is that if Buddhism adopts the middle position, this is not merely because it is the middle, but because it is the true position. The true position means this is the true Buddhist view from the Buddha's time until today. The right Buddhist view is middle position. And this middle position is proof for us. Only the middle position can guide us in practice and lead us to the other shield of Nibbana. Then, in which sense should we understand the middle position as true? In which sense, in which meaning should we understand the middle position as true? It is not wrong, it is not false, it is not illusory, but it can be experienced by us. As mentioned above, Buddhism does not postulate the self-notion either in its spiritual or in its materialist version. Why? Why the middle position is true? Because Buddhism does not postulate the self-notion. The self-notion in Agama or the Nikaya, we may say, we cannot find anything like self or anything like an entity or substance or anything real in our five aggregates. We cannot find anything real or anything can last forever or even for a very short time in our body and in our mind. We cannot find anything which can last for 2 seconds in our body and mind. From this, we can say that the middle position is true because both spiritual eternalism or the materialist orientalism have the self-notion, have the idea of ego or the idea of entity or the idea of something real. Self means real, something real for even a second. When we meditate, we cannot find anything which is real. We can only find that our body, sensation, perception, volition, and the consciousness are changing all the way. Therefore, we cannot find anything which can last for even a second. It is by steering clear of these two versions of the self-notion that Buddhism becomes a middle position and not for any other reason. Buddhism still clear off means Buddhism is away from these two versions of the self notion, because according to Buddhism, everything is selfless. Everything is conditioned by other factors. Therefore, everything has no self. Everything has no entity at all, including our body and the mind or our sensation. Nothing can last for a very short time. The spiritual eternalism and the materialist universalism are the same in the idea of an ego or a self or an entity. What the middle position clearly amounts to is that while others look for granted the reality of the subject as a self-entity, the Buddha challenges its very reality and reduce both subject and object, perceiver and perceived, to dynamic processes without, of course, abrogating the duality between the subject and the object. This sentence is quite long. What the middle position clearly amounts to means equal to. The middle position can be said in other words that while others means other religions or other philosophers or other thinkers or other people than Buddhists. While others took for granted, they have no doubt at all. They believe the reality of the subject as a self-entity, the reality of the subject. A subject can be defined as ourself, of oneself. The reality of the subject means ourself exists now. We can feel that we are here now, that we live now. We have body, we have sensation, we have perception, we have volition, and we have consciousness. This is a kind of reality. We can feel the existence of ourselves. Therefore, we believe that ourself exists. There is something which can be called entity, which can be regarded as existent. This is the self-entity. Other people, then the Buddha, always took for granted that they exist, and therefore they are true, they are real, they have substance. They believe they have a self-entity. However, the Buddha challenges its reality. It means that the Buddha didn't adopt it or didn't accept it, the reality of the subject as a self-entity. And then the Buddha reduced both subject and object. When we have the idea of subject, then naturally, everything beside the subject is called object. perceiver and perceive. When we say we see something, we hear some sound, some voice, or we can smell something, it is the perceiver. The perceiver is the subject, and the perceived means something to be perceived. The Buddha reduced all things as subject and object, perceiver and perceived, in order to explain that there is no self, there is no entity. And the Buddha will reduce everything to dynamic processes. The subject is dynamic, object is dynamic, perceiver is dynamic, and perceive something which is perceived is also dynamic. And the processes are being changing. Everything is a process of changing. And this process is dynamic. It is not static. It is active. It is changing all the time without, of course, abrogating the duality between the subject and the object. Abrogating means negate or neglected or not recognizing the duality between the subject and the object. It means that the Buddha in the early Buddhist teachings didn't believe that there is an self entity, there's an entity of oneself in our five aggregates. But the Buddha didn't negate the existence of the subject or the object, abrogated the duality between the subject and the object. For example, in five Nikayas, the Buddha say, when our eyes organ or our sensual organ conducts the external material, then our visual consciousness arises. Obviously, there is one subject, which is our five sense organs. And there are also five external objects, which can be sensed by our five senses. The Buddha didn't reject them. However, this is the teaching of the early Buddhist discourses. In Mahayana Buddhism, we say that both the subject and the object are emptiness in self-nature. Of course, the nature of the subject and object are empty. It doesn't mean that there is no subject and no object, but it means the subject is empty in nature, and the object is also empty in nature. There is no self-nature at all, because everything is dependent, originated. The subject-object abrogation is part of mystical experience. The subject-object abrogation, it means the negation of the existence of the subject and the object. This kind of abrogation or negation is part of mystical experience. A mystical experience means the religious experience. For example, when we pray to the God, then we lose ourselves. And then we will find that we are combined with the God. Or when we practice meditation, then we may find we lose ourselves. When we lose the feeling of our body and our thought, and we attain the so-called jhana, we don't have the dualism between ourselves and the external object. This is a kind of a mystical experience. Buddhism also emphasizes the importance of meditation, but Buddha told us we have to practice concentration meditation and also insight meditation. Only the insight meditation or analytical meditation can let us find the truth of our five aggregates. And then we find there is no self at all. Everything is changing. Then we can attain the Nibbana because we find the truth. The subject-object abrogation is only part of the mystical experience. It has no place in the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha's teaching don't emphasize the mystical experience. The Buddha is different from other religions. The Buddha emphasized the true experience, what we may call it the yoga jhana. The Buddha emphasized the yoga jhana. Yoga means connection with the truth, or the close connection between our body and the mind. Our mind can see the truth, can realize the truth. This is called yoga. Jhana means practice. Yoga means the practice of the true connection. It is not a kind of mystical experience. Out of the yoga or out of the Buddhist practice of concentration and insight meditation, we have a very good condition of our mind. And to use this good condition of mind to observe what is happening in our body and mind. It is not a kind of mystical experience because this experience is obtained from very clear state of our mind. It is in the jhanic state that we can practice the insight analysis. The Buddha didn't accept the mystical experience. It means that the Buddha can experience the truth. Other people can also experience the truth. It is under a very clear, very peaceful mind state. It is not out of the prayer to the God, not out of anything imagined. We believe that it is only when one takes this middle context into consideration that can one properly understand not only what led to the birth of Buddhism, but also the significance of its basic doctrines, as for instance, dependent arising, doctrine of non-self, the theory and the practice of moral life, the diagnosis of the human condition, the unanswered questions, the Buddhist critique of theoretical views, as well as the nature of Nibbana, the final goal of Buddhism. But we believe if we want to understand the birth of Buddhism, and also if we want to understand all the theories or all the doctrines in Buddhism, not only in early Buddhism, but also in Mahayana Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, or every kind of Buddhism, we have to accept the middle position. Otherwise, we cannot under any kind of Buddhist doctrines. Those Buddhist doctrines mentioned in this book are dependent arising, which we will read in the future. Doctrine of non-self, we can find it not only in early Buddhism. It is the core thought in Mahayana Buddhism. We call it Shunya in Pali or Shunyata in Sanskrit. The theory and the practice of moral life. The theory of moral life is dependent origination, and the practice of moral life is the noble effort path. The diagnosis of the human condition. The diagnosis of human condition means the judgment of the human condition. That is the Four Noble Truths, and also the 12 factors of causation. When we diagnose our human condition, we find we have no freedom. We are conditioned by other people, by the climate, by the culture, by the nature, everything. We are controlled by so numberless things. We are not free at all. This is called dukkha, or suffering in English. Of course, suffering is not the correct meaning of dukkha. Dukkha means conditioned, and conditions means not free, no freedom. And we analyze what are the causes of the dukkha. Then the Buddha discovered the causes of dukkha are the greed, the hatred, and the ignorance. Because of these three poisons, we may do bad things which will cause us suffer in the future. Even when we do good things, the future we can have good result, but it is still caught in samsara. It is not the eternal liberation. For the eternal liberation, we have to find the truth of our life. That is the practice of Eightfold Noble Path. And then we can attain Nibbana. This is the diagnosis of the human condition. And even we can explain our life or birth and death from the viewpoint of the 12-factor causation or the 12 links of factors. The unanswered question refers to those questions which are not legitimate, which are groundless, and which has nothing to do with the liberation of our suffering. The Buddhist critique of theoretical views, Buddhism, emphasizes only right thinking and the right practice. Theoretical views come from our imagination. It is not the result of our yogacara. It is only our illusory thinking. They are not real. They cannot conform with the truth. As well as the nature of Nibbana, the final goal of Buddhism. Nibbana. Nibbana can be explained as cessation of conditioned factors or the ending of suffering, the causes of suffering. The nature of Nibbana, and the Nibbana is the final goal of Buddhism. The nature of Nibbana doesn't mean extinction, doesn't mean disappearance of our body and consciousness, or even the sensation or perception and volition. But the very basic meaning of Nibbana is the extinction of our attachment to or our clinging to the five aggregates. If we detach ourselves from the five aggregates, that means we have the five aggregates, but we don't believe them as real, as true, and we don't attach to them. We just follow the process of the changing of our five aggregates. When we get sick, then we know we are getting sick. We just let it be. When we get old and when we are dying, we just accept that we get old or get sick, that we are going to die. We accept them. We don't cling to the idea of self. We don't cling to our physical body and the mind. This is the true nature of Nibbana. True nature of Nibbana is the cessation of clinging, the cessation of attachment to the idea of self-entity. It means we don't attach to the idea of the reality of our body and the mind. That's all. It is the liberation from our three poisons. We are free from any conditions. That is the true nature of Nibbana. These Buddhist doctrines, as we have shown in the course of this work, assume their significance in distinction themselves from the two world views of spiritual eternalism and annihilationism, materialism. This Buddhist doctrine not only confined to what I mentioned, but also we can extend to other Mahayana Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism. Assume their significance in distinction themselves from the two world views. Assume their significance means that all the Buddhist doctrines are very significant. They emphasize they don't have anything to do with the two world views of spiritual eternalism and annihilationism, materialism. It is this factor that provides synthetic unity and a thematic coherence to all Buddhist teachings. This is a very wonderful sentence. It is this factor, which kind of a factor, in short, the middle position. The middle position provides synthetic unity. It means there is no other view in different schools of Buddhism than the middle position. Only the middle position is the same view from the very beginning of Buddhism until today and even to the future. If there is no middle position, then we can say this is not Buddhist teachings. Middle position is the factor to determine whether it is Buddhism or not. And the thematic coherence, thematic means topic or the core thought. Coherence means the same. All different Buddhist schools have the same theme of middle position. Because middle position is the backbone of all Buddhist theories. 4 other teachings may vary from each other, but only the middle position is the same in all the Buddhist schools. The present work is mainly based on the Sutta Pitaka, the basket of discourses of the Pali Buddhist canon. This book is mainly based on the author is a well-known scholar. So what he wrote have the sources, references from the Sutta Pitaka. Sutta in Sanskrit is called sutra, or in English it's called the scripture or the canon or the holy book. Pitaka means basket. Therefore, Sutta Pitaka means the basket of discourses. The basic means the collection of discourses, the collection of the talks by the Buddha. In Theravada Buddhism, they have 5 Nikayas. Nikaya means division. 5 Nikaya means 5 divisions or 5 categories of the Buddha's talk. The Buddha's talk well collected and categorized into 5 kinds. This is called the Sutta Pitaka. In Buddhism, in Mahayana Buddhism, we also have the 3 Pitakas or 3 baskets. In Sanskrit, it's called three Pitakas. And in Pali, it's called T-I, T Pitaka. The Pitaka of Sutta, the Pitaka of Vinaya, the Pitaka of Shastra. Sutta is the talk by the Buddha or the Buddha's disciples or masters of the later generation. However, in Theravada Buddhism, all the suttas are the tokens of the Buddha's and his disciples. It is different from the Mahayana or Chinese Buddhism. Sutta of Vinaya. Vinaya means discipline. Sila and Vinaya. Sila is to train oneself, and the discipline is the guidelines of human interaction or human relationship. When there are more than 2 people, then we have to follow the discipline. But for the self-training, we use the Siddha. So Siddha is different from the Vinaya. Vinaya contains the Siddha, the rules of interpersonal relations. Pitaka of Sutra. Sutra is the commentary, or is called Abhidhamma in both Sanskrit and Pali. This book is mainly based on the Sutta Pitaka, the basket discourses of the Pali Buddhist canon. Of course, the author also made reference to some Sanskrit canon, but very few. However, where necessary, it will consult the post-canonical commentary exegesis in interpreting the early Buddhist teachings. The author, mainly based on the Pitaka to write this book, but where necessary, we also find that it is necessary to refer to the post-canonical commentary exists. Canonical. The post-canonical means the time after about the 1st century, because the Pitakas were collected from the time of King Asoka. King Asoka reigns India in the 3rd century before the Common Era. And then within 100 or 200 years, the Pitakas were completed by the Pali masters. And the Buddhism spread to Sri Lanka in the 3rd century before Common Era. The Buddhism was brought to Sri Lanka by son and the daughter of King Asoka, and within 100 or 200 years, the Pitaka are completed. And after that, more commentaries appear, and the commentaries on commentaries are called commentarial exegesis. Exegesis is the commentary on commentary. Commentary means annotation or the explanation to the original canons. It means that the author usually refer to the Sutta Pitaka, and when necessary, he also referred to other commentaries and even commentaries on commentaries to complete, to write this book. From this, we can clearly understand the theme of this book, the main idea of this book, and how the author explained the middle position. And he emphasized that the middle position is the only teaching in Theravadan Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, and even Tibetan Buddhism. There are different skillful means of practice in different schools, different places, different times, and different cultures. But only one teaching remains always the same. That is the middle position, nothing at all. only middle position is common to different schools of the different traditions of Buddhism. And we believe that only middle position can guide us to the ultimate goal of Nibbana. Okay. This is the end of today's talk. And then, okay, is it a question?
Sir, I have one question.
Yeah.
Since you introduced this to us and talk about the theoretical views, but I also noticed when he also talk about the doctrine of origin and origination, and he used the term theory. So what's the difference between theory and the theoretical views? Because I noticed also that you translate that to theoretical views to the Chinese also use 理论, but the theory is also 理论. So what's the difference between theory and the theoretical views, or they just is the sense? And that's my question.
Theory and theoretical view.
Yeah.
Theory and the theoretical view.
Yeah.
Okay, in this book, when the author mentioned theoretical view, it means the view out of reasoning, out of our logical thinking. It is not the outcome of experience, the experience of the meditation, concentration, and insight meditation. It means they have no actual experience of insight and concentration meditation. They only use their brain to reason, use the logic to find the theories. But in Buddhism, we emphasize the practice. We listening to the teachings and we reflection of the teaching, and then we have to put into practice. Only the real mind, peaceful mind, can help us to find the truth.
Yeah, so that's just a different definition between the theoretical views and the theory, because the books they also mention that the theory and practice of the middle theory.
Right.
He also uses
Yeah. Middleness is called the theory or the Buddhist theory, Buddhist doctrine, because this is not the outcome of theoretical reasoning. This is the result of the Buddha's discovery. The Buddha discovered the middle position from his only practice of concentration and the insight meditation.
So theoretical views maybe have something to do with speculation.
Yeah. Sometimes the view comes from reasoning, logical thinking, or comes from the so-called mystical experience. But in Buddhism, we call the samadhi, or the right view. The right view should comes from the practice of moral life, the practice of Siddha, Samatha, and Vipassana. Only the practice of the three learnings can lead us to have the samadhi, the right view. Okay. Okay.
May I ask? In the preface, the author said the subject object abrogation is part of mystical experience. It is not present in the teachings of the Buddha, but is it also applied to the Mahayana Buddhism? Or only the early Buddha teaching?
No. If we understand clearly the teachings in Mahayana Buddhism, for example, the Sunyata, or the idea of the Buddha nature, or the idea of a mind nature, then we can understand that even Mahayana Buddhism accept the existence of subject and object. But in all schools of Buddhism, we don't accept the reality of the subject and the object. The subject and the object exist. Of course, they exist, but they are not real because they are conditioned. They are dependently originated. They are in the process of changing. They are in dynamic process. Therefore, we say the middle position abrogates the two extremes of views, but they still accept the existence of the subject and the object. However, the subject objects are in process of changing. They have no real nature. They have no ever-existing substance. They are in dynamic process of changing. That's all. If we understand clearly the meaning of middle position, it means it keeps aloof from, it doesn't get involved with any idea, any view. It is aloof from, it transcends all different views, because we understand the views have only relative value. It means the view has some kind of value in relation to the goal, the attainment of Nibbana. Apart from Nibbana, apart from the aim, or apart from the final goal of Buddhism, then middle position has no value at all. It is only a skillful means. It is only a means, not the end. Therefore, even the middle position, even the right view, has only relative value. It means it has no absolute value. It is valuable only compared to, or discussed, or linked with the ultimate goal, the Nibbana. If we forget Nibbana, then even the right view of middle position has no value at all. For example, it is a kind of vessel. The vessel is only means to get across to the other shore of the river. If we don't go to the other shore of the river, then the vessel has no value at all. And when we ride the vessel, take the vessel to get across the river to the other shore, then the function of the vessel cease already. We cannot carry the vessel on our shoulders. It is nonsense to carry anymore. So the views, or even the right view, or even the middle position is only a means. It has relative value at all. It has no absolute value. It means that we cannot grasp even the middle position. It is only a means to help us to liberate from the suffering. Okay.
Okay, thank Professor.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Lim.
Thank you, Professor Ching, for the detailed exposition today of the preface of the written book on early Buddhist teachings, middle position in theory and practice. Now, before we end this online Dharma session, dear fellow class members, once again, please turn on our video cameras and let us put our palms together.
Okay,
Let us listen and repeat after Professor Ching as we invite the professor to lead the class in the dedication of merits. Professor Ching, please.
May all sentient beings be free from the causes of suffering.
May all sentient beings be free from the causes of suffering.
May all sentient beings be free from suffering.
May all sentient beings be free from suffering.
May the world be peaceful all the time.
May
The world be peaceful all the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Right, Namo Amitopo, dear fellow class members, please continue to put our palms together. In gratitude and with great appreciation, please give one bow to the professor and Dharma teacher. Thank you, Professor Ching. Once again, thank you, and see you again at the next online session.
Okay, see you next time.
Everybody.